Hi, in the last video we looked at how to take a database backup. In particular, we took a database backup in the simple recovery mode, and the kind of backup that we took was a full database backup. In this video we are going to look at how now to restore that database backup into another instance of SQL Server. You might have to perform this operation either as part of a disaster recovery scenario or as part of a database migration. For the most part, you would most frequently be doing this as part of a database migration. By database migration, what we mean here is that you need to go ahead and install SQL Server on another instance, on another hardware, or on the same hardware as a different instance. After which, you would generally take a backup of the existing databases, restore these database backups on the new instance, and then remap logins. So let's go ahead and see how to do the database restore operation, and while doing that I'll explain some of the key concepts as far as restore operations are concerned. If you remember, last time we took a backup, it was in the AdventureWorks database backup, and the folder was the default backup folder. So let's go ahead and just have a look at that. As you can see, I've got quite a few instances of Microsoft SQL Server. So just give me a second while I find the instance backup. Right, so here's the backup that we took last, and I'm going to go ahead now and just take a copy of this backup and restore it into the backup folder of the second instance, or actually just copy paste it over to the backup of the second instance, the backup folder of the second instance. There we go. Now the second instance, I've already gone ahead and opened it up. So as you can see here, I currently don't have the AdventureWorks database available. So I'm just going to go ahead and select restore database. I'm going to call it AdventureWorks. And I'm going to restore it from the disk. So I'm going to choose device and then navigate to the backup folder. As you can see, by default it already opens up the backup folder of this instance, and I have the database backup available, so I'm going to just select it, press OK. In fact, before I press OK, I can even view the contents of the backup by just clicking the contents button, and as you can see, we've got a full database backup of the AdventureWorks database taken on the 17th of August. And then you got things like size and other stuff. Go ahead, press OK. At this point, I want to go ahead and select the checkbox for restore, so I've gone ahead and done that, and then select options. Since I don't have an existing database, I'm just going to leave the option to overwrite unchecked. At the same time, I don't have to go ahead and do any preserved replication settings because I haven't enabled replication, so I'm going to leave that off as well. I want to be able to have users connect to the database, so I'm not going to make it in restricted mode either. And since I have only one database backup, I don't need to be prompted because I'll be initializing just one restore operation anyway. If you remember from the previous video, we have 3 different files as part of the backup. So we've got 2 data files and 1 log file. The critical aspect about this particular restore operation is that we've got 3 different options available here. Now, logically, the only one that makes sense here is to restore with recovery. The restore with recovery, basically what it means, as the description says here, is that it'll go ahead and roll back any uncommitted transactions. This means that once this particular operation is done, the database is accessible and available for users to go ahead and perform operations. If you assume or if you feel that there are certain other database backups that need to be restored in addition to the one that you're performing right now, then in order to go ahead and maintain a sequence of events or a logical continuation of the restore process, you might need to go ahead and select restore with no recovery. You might see this option being implemented, especially when you have transaction log files that you need to go ahead and restore. In other words, if you have a sequence of log files, it means that the log file, because of the log sequence number, need to be restored in a particular sequence. As a result, you cannot really go ahead and complete the transaction because a transaction might span across multiple backups. Say for example, you've taken a log backup today, right now, and then you have another log backup in another 5 minutes. And assuming that you have a transaction that started 2 minutes back, you're likely to have a transaction that spans across this backup as well as the next. In these scenarios, you need to go ahead and restore with no recovery so that you can go ahead and complete the transaction in the next backup that will be restored. As a result, you'll go ahead and choose this operation. Occasionally, you might have a scenario where you want to go ahead and try restoring a file first in an uncommitted state, and then if the next backup that you're trying to restore fails, you might choose to just go ahead and stick with the one that you've just restored. In these scenarios, you can go ahead and just choose the database to be restored in this particular mode. It's a read-only mode, and what happens is that any transactions that need to be uncommitted will be saved into a standby file. This way, it knows which transactions need to be rolled back as part of the restore operation in case the second backup that you're trying to restore fails. Like I said, we are using a simple recovery mode, so we don't really have transaction log files to restore. And at this moment, we're dealing with purely a full backup, so we're just going to stick with restore with recovery. Select that option and then press OK. And as you can see, we get a status indicating the percentage of the restore operation. And as you can see, it's executing 20, 30%, etc. And once it's done, the database should be available for use. As you can see, we've got the message saying that the database has been restored successfully, and when you go ahead and press OK, that's pretty much the end of the restore process. You can see that I've got the AdventureWorks database with all the tables and the procedures and stuff related to this particular restore operation. And you might notice that the name of the database has changed because when I tried to restore the database, I chose to give it a different name. The next step of mapping the database or completing the process would be to go ahead and map logins to existing users. As you can see, we probably have a couple of users listed here. In fact, we don't have any users listed here, so you can just go ahead and create a login and then map the login to a user. This has already been covered in another video called Logins and Users. So with that, we've actually completed the restore operation for the AdventureWorks database. A key thing to remember with restore operations is that the restore has two parts to it: the redo and the undo phase. The redo is a stage where it completes or rolls the transactions all the way to the last state or the last transaction, a timestamp, and then the undo phase is where it decides which transactions would probably be uncommitted or be in a transient state, and then undo or roll back those transactions. This concludes this video on how to take a backup and restore. I will be following it up with additional videos on file backups, partial backups, page recovery, and other certain backups and restore operations that you might encounter. Thank you.